All right, good afternoon. Charles Moscowitz here. Welcome to the program. I'm going live today solo, and I'm taking calls mainly because my usual co-host, that being Michael D. Shaw, just informed me about a half an hour ago that he could not make it today. He'll be joining me tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and that the reason he can't make it is because, and he didn't get into details. We're going to talk more tomorrow, but he's in Los Angeles and he is being affected, and his home is being affected by these horrendous fires. There's, I don't know if he told me that he's safe and that his family is safe, but that, like many people, hundreds of thousands of people, he is being affected by this awful and horrendous fire. So my prayer goes out to my good friend Michael D. Shaw and to all of the people in Los Angeles right now who are suffering the effects of this horrible fire. We can, by the way, you can chat with me online, or you can literally call the program. I take calls here. This is a live program, and you could call in. We do it sort of like old-fashioned radio. Let me just see. Where am I? Did I just lose everything? I think I did. Okay, let me let me get out of this. Let me get out of this, and let me get out of this, and I'll call it back. I'm sorry about this. You'll have to bear with me, TikTok. By the way, you're welcome to comment as I go back into the system here. Let me just see what the heck. Here we go. Enter studio and continuing onward and upward. All right, there we are. We're in the studio. As I mentioned, 508. Whoops. Am I like somewhere else? Oh, I see. So I never did leave. All right. I apologize if this is a little confusing here. Let me just see if I can X out of this one then. Let me just see maybe the best way for me to yeah, there we are. Okay, thank you very much. 508-637-5596 is the number. 508-637-5596. If you'd like to join the program, you are welcome aboard. And you can also, as I mentioned, we receive texts here, and you can do that. Public chats. I don't want private chats. You can do that by doing the on the various networks that carry the show, which includes Kicks and Rumble and all the rest. You can text me, and I will read that text. And you can do that at TikTok, where I am also live. So, as I mentioned, my good friend Michael D. Shaw cannot make it today because he is and his family is in Los Angeles, and they are dealing with the biggest bonfire, the biggest fires to ever afflict California in history. God willing, he's okay. My prayers go out to him and to all of the people who are losing property and possibly, God forbid, lives in this horrendous fire, which comes in the final, decrepit, miserable, corrupt last days of this illegitimate regime in Washington, and should be a wake-up call to the people of California who elected this rotten leftist government in their state. This is an example of where elections matter. This is an example of where the belief system and the philosophy of those who are elected matters, because they make laws and they establish regulation and they set the tone. And in the case of California, President Trump warned them years ago during a brush fire when he was out there face to face with Gavin Newsom that they had to figure out a way, and he based this on solid science and good environmental policy, that they had to find a way to divert the hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water in the northern part of the state, some of that water to the desert-like, drought-stricken southern part of the state. More broadly, it has been suggested, and this is something that's been out there for a long time. I don't know why this has never been taken up by Congress. This is a national issue, that the waters of the great northwestern part of Canada, the Great Slave Lake and the Great Blue Lake, and there's some lakes up there that are bigger than Lake Superior. They're huge lakes, that those lakes dump trillions of gallons of fresh water into the ocean, probably daily. I don't know the numbers. I'm not a scientist. But I do know the general political suggestion, which is that it wouldn't take a lot to divert a small amount of that water by means of pipelines and aqueducts to the western part of the United States. California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, regions that are in a serious water shortage, while at the same time regions that are growing in population. These things make basic sense. This is the way the United States once operated. We had these forward-thinking ideas that would advance our culture, our civilization, our way of life, our economy. Things like building the Erie Canal, in the 19th century. I mean, things like building forts along the eastern seaboard to protect from foreign invasion. The network of canals and highways. I mean, the Intercontinental Railway, which was built during the time of Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if it was finished at that time. I think it was after Lincoln had been assassinated that it was finished. Even in the 1950s, Eisenhower's interstate highway system. Eisenhower built that because he observed as the commanding general in World War II that the Germans had a highway system that crisscrossed the country and that allowed them to get military personnel and munitions and material easily from one side of the country to the other, which was good for defense, and that he wanted to replicate that system in the United States and did so with the interstate highway system. The launching of NASA under John F. Kennedy. These were great national infrastructure public works projects that we need to bring back to this country. Biden promised to connect people up to the, for cyber connection all over the country. And of course, he didn't do a damn thing about it and took in who knows how many billions of dollars, which went who knows where. That's usually how liberal Democrats roll. But now with President Trump, thank God, about to take office in a matter of weeks, maybe we can get back to some of these great projects which made this country great and which are very much in line with the spirit of America. These and Trump seems to be the type that is open to this. I mean, even talk about annexing Greenland is very much in that realm. Greenland with a receding ice cap, we now know that Greenland has rare minerals, things like lithium, which is used for car batteries and other products, and that stuff that we import from China almost entirely can now be imported from Greenland, and that Greenland is coveted by thus the superpowers of the world. You got Russia looking at it, you've got China looking at putting a base there. So President Trump is co-opting them by offering to acquire Greenland from Denmark, which is in no position to defend it, and as such, creating either a new commonwealth similar to Puerto Rico, which has local autonomy and semi-independence, but yet which is a territory of the United States, or Greenland perhaps at some point may qualify to become an American state, but I don't think they're there yet. So it would have a territorial government similar to all of the territorial governments that were created as America expanded west after the American Revolution, starting with Tennessee and Ohio, and then moving west into all of the other states, all of which started out as territories. So perhaps Greenland could take on a status of territory. As far as the Panama Canal is concerned, that was sovereign American land that was given up by Jimmy Carter, mistakenly, in my opinion. But even so, there were treaties involved in that turning over to Panama of the canal, and those treaties have been violated or ignored. So the United States has, and particularly with regard to China, taking a very large commanding share in the control of that canal, and the turning over, the triple, quadruple charging of American shipping going through the canal. That's a national security issue for the United States. That is the main causeway that connects the eastern and the western seaboards of the United States. So we have to have access to that canal unimpeded. Thus, you have President Trump putting pressure on Panama to make sure that that happens, with the threat that if it doesn't happen, and if they continue to violate the treaties that they signed when Jimmy Carter handed it over, that we will take reasonable action to reassert our authority and our sovereignty over the canal that indeed the United States built, and that Americans lost their lives building back in the early part of the 20th century, starting with Teddy Roosevelt. So, these are all assertions of American sovereignty, of American influence in the North American continent, and it's all for the better. Thank God President Trump is doing it. President Trump is taking office now in less than 2 weeks, and I'm just so grateful. I worry that something bad could happen. Let me just see. We have somebody who wants to join me on TikTok. Welcome aboard. You're welcome to join me. You're welcome to call in. 508-637-5596. 508-637-5596. And it's an open line. So as I mentioned earlier, my good friend, Michael D. Shaw, who joins me every Thursday at 3, he just called me about 20 minutes ago to tell me he can't make it today, mainly because he's in Los Angeles and he's dealing with fire. Thank God he's okay. I didn't get into details with him, but he told me that the atmosphere is pretty smoky, and this is a catastrophe. Does anybody want to talk about this? There were a lot of issues around this. There was mismanagement of the environment, as I mentioned earlier. President Trump predicted it. He talked to Gavin Newsom about this during his first term. In person, there's videos of it where they're standing together and he's saying, basically divert some of the hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water in the north to the south. The federal government will help to build aqueducts and pipelines to bring that water to the south, to preserve that water, And Gavin Newsom said no thank you because he had some cockamamie environmentalists having a theory that too much water in the South would somehow damage the rare smelt that's like a little fish, which, by the way, apparently is not even true. It would not have damaged the smelt. The smelt would have been fine. Why should the smelt care if there's more or less water? I'm not a scientist, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense from a general understanding. If anyone out there knows something about this, you're welcome to call 508-637-5596, 508-637-5596, or you can text me on TikTok or on Rumble or any of the other stations that carry this show. Let me just see if I'm up on Rumble. I should be live there. I'll go to charlesmoscowitz.com and see. Yeah. Well, it looks like we're live on the Charles Moscowitz website, but let me see. Are we live on Rumble? Rumble. Yeah, Rumble. Yeah, we're live on Rumble. So you're welcome to. Yeah. Let me just shut there we go. You're welcome to text on Rumble, which is the flagship station of this show. I was removed from YouTube, by the way. In several years ago, I think mainly the main strike at YouTube was that I discussed the verboten topic of the legitimacy of the 2020 election. And my hope is that now that regime is leaving, thank God, in a matter of days, and I'll wait until they're completely and utterly gone, maybe now YouTube could lift that censorship because there is no longer a threat to the regime. The regime is dead. It's not like anything that I could or anyone else could say might result in a decertification of that election. It'll be over. They will have been basically, marched back into the sewers of history where they belong. And by the way, they have the Trump haters have one final gasp, one final orgasm, if you will. I'm sorry to be crude. One final miserable moment, which is whether or not this corrupt judge in Manhattan sentences Trump. And that's supposed to happen tomorrow, unless the US Supreme Court intervenes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that case other than to briefly state that what they did there, which was part of this agenda to take Trump out by putting him in jail, by throwing as much mud as they could at him, using the legal system to do it, possibly, God forbid, assassinating him, raiding his home. I mean, you name it. They did everything to Trump. There's never been a man more investigated than Trump. That part of this was to basically charge him with allegedly a campaign misdemeanor by inappropriately labeling an expense that was not a campaign expense. It was a personal expense, and it did not use any campaign funds, unlike Hillary Clinton, by the way, who used millions of dollars of campaign funds and who was fined by the Federal Elections Commission for doing so. Instead, it was just that he had mislabeled a payment that allegedly had been made to a hooker for, as a legal expense in order to avoid the embarrassment of reveal. So this was too good for them to give up because it both smeared Trump as a man and it basically, oh, look at, he's like paying off hookers, but also that because it was technically not a payment, he made it into a payment for legal expense or some other expense, that could have been seen as a crime. The fact is that any legal theorist, including great legal minds like Alan Dershowitz and Jonathan Turley of Georgetown University, and the law itself have noted that this is a misdemeanor that either should have been taken up with the IRS, which would have resulted in a fine, or if it was to be taken up by the Federal Election Commission, and that's a very big question as to whether or not it was a campaign matter, it would have also been a misdemeanor that would have been penalized with a fine. That is the kind of thing that happens all the time with politicians in every election. That's what the FCC is there to do, FEC. But instead, you had this corrupt judge and this corrupt DA receiving, colluding with the corrupt Department of Justice in the Biden administration, particularly in the person of Matthew Colangelo, who was a assistant DA, number 3 man at the Department of Justice, quitting his job and going to work for Alvin Bragg in New York 3 weeks later. So you had a collusion between, that's the argument made, and I think it's a good one, that there is a collusion between the Department of Justice and the local DA, which is very questionable. I'm not sure it's illegal, but it's highly unethical. And what they did was they took this misdemeanor, they turned it into a felony. They used the state of New York law, the legal system in New York did nothing to stop that. They split it up into 34 pieces of the same felony, and they got convictions from a corrupt jury who had been given very questionable instructions from this judge. And meanwhile, this judge is profiting from the thing personally by using his daughter's PR firm, which accepted tens of millions of dollars, selling the idea there that the father was going to get Trump, put him in jail. And they got big money from the Harris campaign, from Adam Schiff, and from others. So very corrupt. The kind of thing that in a normal society that doesn't have a 2-tier system of justice, these people would have been put in prison. They would have been charged with crimes. But instead, they were able to prosecute the former president at the time as and given a complete pass. I mean, this whole issue of this lawfare is something that really ought to be investigated. Trump did nothing wrong, really. I mean, the idea that he would be, the investigations against him, there's never been a person in history who has been more investigated than Donald Trump. So anyway, it didn't work. President Trump won both the popular vote and the Electoral College. He won all of the battleground states. He won all of the bellwether counties. The U.S. Senate went to the Republicans, even though they might have stolen a seat or two. Certainly in the case of Kerry Lake, they did, I think. And they held on to the U.S. House, even though several of those elections were questionable, particularly 2 in California, where you had counting going on 3 weeks after the election. Really? And then all of a sudden, the Democrat is installed. So in spite of that, the Republicans have held on to the House. Speaker Johnson, whether we like him or not, and I'm not a fan, but nevertheless, he was reelected as House Speaker. So we did not have the ruckus contest that the liberal Dems were chopping, their hands together and hoping for. And now we have President Trump heading into office, and it's going to be a very interesting time. I thought it was interesting watching the Jimmy Carter funeral. And just because I was wanting to see what kind of interactions the former presidents would have with President-elect Trump. And the Bushes, they walked by as if Trump didn't exist. They looked extremely uncomfortable. The Clintons, I think, deliberately must have had their seating away from Trump so they wouldn't have to in any way engage with him. Hillary Clinton's hairdo was unbelievable, by the way. Check it out. But Obama sat down right next to Trump and had a very affable conversation with him, with both of them shaking hands and smiling. Trump didn't look like he really wanted to talk to Obama, but Obama was the Karen Pence snub of Trump was fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. And Pence, he wanted to make contact with Trump. I mean, don't forget, he betrayed Trump during the assembly of January the 6th. It was his prerogative as the president of the assembly and as vice president to call for contact, to recognize 7 states that wanted to contest their elections. The whole thing was interrupted when the Capitol Police swung open the doors to the U.S. Capitol, and people like Ray Epps and other potential agents came crashing in. They were the ringleaders. That put an end to the assembly hearing those 7 states. There were 7 states that were contesting the election. 7 states. Think about it. I think there's even an 8th state possibly. But that didn't happen because of the incursion into the Capitol. So who benefited from that? I'll tell you who benefited. At around midnight, Congress reconvened and they gavelled Biden into office. That's who benefited, okay? I don't know if I want to go too far into that because this is still a taboo subject on YouTube, and I am running on YouTube today through another station. So, and also TikTok, I think it's a no-no. So let's leave that right there. Okay, we've got somebody who wants to join the show. Yeah, you're welcome. Come on down. The comments, you're welcome to comment. You're welcome to call in 508-637-5596. 508-637-5596. How do you feel about the upcoming Trump era, MAGA era? Are you excited like I am? Are you looking forward to it? What are the Trump haters doing? I mean, I have to say, I'm awfully worried about the sort of the quiet element. I mean, they aren't like doing the usual agitating. That says Pelosi's evil timing. She forewent procedures and installed House rules. Well, just to briefly touch on January 6th, again, I don't want to go too deep, but President Trump, it's now been confirmed, contacted Nancy Pelosi. He contacted Mark Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he contacted Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., asking all 3 to provide security backup at the U.S. Capitol building, none of which happened. They were all ignored. So does that tell us something about what was going down that day? By the way, there's also this very interesting element that's being covered by Darren Beatty at Revolver News. He's been a guest on my program about the pipe bomber who had planted a bomb or a fake bomb or whatever at both the DNC and the RNC headquarters the day before the assembly. The FBI was investigating that, which is a major incident, and then they suddenly dropped the investigation for reasons that are not known. When Christopher Wray, the corrupt head of the FBI, was asked about this under oath at Congress, he answered, well, I can't comment on that because that's an ongoing investigation. And I think it was Ted Cruz or whoever was doing the questioning, might have been Josh Hawley, said, well, you just said that this was no longer being investigated. And Wray responded by reiterating, oh, no, we cannot comment on an ongoing investigation. So is it being investigated or not? No comment. Anyways, that kind of crap is going to be over if God willing, Kash Patel is installed as the head of the FBI. Finally, the FBI will have a cleaning of the house, and it'll get back to its original mission, which is to literally go after bad criminal conspiracies against the United States. I mean, I don't know if I'm not a big fan of the FBI anyway, but at least under J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI did investigate and go after genuine enemies that threatened the peace in the United States, namely the Ku Klux Klan, the Communist Party, and the Mafia. Okay? Enough said. Anyway, you're welcome to join the program 508 637 5596. 508 637 5596. Thank God I'm counting down the days when President Trump is sworn in. I am worried a little bit about his safety and the safety of his family. Okay, I'm not going to deny that. I've said this on a couple of TikToks that I've done already. James O'Keefe, who does undercover journalism, the kind of journalism that used to be done originally at 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace. Remember, he would chase someone down the street. He has sources who have said that the Department of Homeland Security is beefing up their presence with medical personnel at the inaugural. Why is that? Are they expecting something to happen? I mean, who knows? We know that there's possible connection between these drones that have been all over seen primarily in the skies of New Jersey and Iran. Maybe there might be something like that. God forbid. The other piece of evidence I'll mention is Dan Bongino, who is a great talk show host and podcaster. Check out his podcast. Former Secret Service agent himself, worked in both the Bush and Obama administrations. He knows the inner workings of the Secret Service. He's very good at it. He has sent out a warning about rallies that might take place the day before inauguration. He's basically suggesting that people stay home because we may, God forbid, experience a repeat of what happened on January the 6th of 2021, where you have agents, assets, cutouts, whatever you want to call them, of enemies of President Trump dressed in Trump garb coming out and causing trouble. All right. Maybe as a way to rough things up and try to muddy the waters for the new administration, as a way to distract it. They're not going quietly. I don't see that. We should remember what happened after President Trump took office the first time. The next day, somebody released the tapes of his phone calls with two world leaders, which of course is classified. There's top secret information naturally on those calls. That is a felony. Whoever did that should have been charged with, spying, treason, I don't know, something serious. And that those transcripts were picked up by the Washington Post, which then basically extracted various statements, putting them out of context that could be used to embarrass the new president. And that's what happened throughout his presidency. Now, I believe that Trump has learned from that. I think he's coming into office now with a pretty good handle on what you're right, you don't know. No, we don't. None of us know, but we can conjecture. Okay, we all only have information available to us that we can glean from the media. The people that are in the know on any of these things aren't talking for the most part, although there were a few truth tellers. By the way, one of whom is Jeffrey Sachs. He's telling the truth about the Ukraine war. He's bringing up some unpleasant and uncomfortable elements of the Israel-Gaza war and of Israel's relationship with the United States. He's a truth teller. So, we have to admire that when it happens. Every phone call is taped, like the call he pressured the LG of Georgia more votes and didn't get. Well, first of all, yes, every call is taped, but it's not supposed to be released. That's top secret information on those calls, especially when you're talking to a foreign leader. And the problem is whoever released those calls committed a felony. As far as his conversation with Raffensperger of Georgia, he asked Raffensperger to, quote, find, unquote, 11,000 votes. He didn't say steal. He said find. And Raffensperger could, if Raffensperger had been honest, he could have found 100,000 votes for Trump. But he didn't want to, mainly because he was, for whatever reason, he didn't want Trump to win Georgia. I don't know why. What I've been told is, according to Favorito, who is a major, he's a legal figure in Georgia. He was a part of the government, and he did some research on the corrupt election of 2020. Raffensperger had a report on his desk which indicated that hundreds of thousands of votes had been stolen. And he didn't mention it to President Trump during that call. So I think that that's something that ought to be investigated, not by some partisan hack like Big Fanny, but by maybe the incoming Department of Justice under Pam Bondi and the incoming FBI director, Kash Patel. I would hope that they do investigate Georgia and Maricopa County in Arizona and that corrupt Secretary of State in Michigan who changed laws to make it easier for votes that had no connection to a voter to be cast, and other factors that led to, let's just say, election improprieties. I want to be careful here because, once again, I am on YouTube today, so I don't want to get shut down. Also, I don't want to get shut down on TikTok. The party of law and order is now totally against law and order. And which party would that be? SIN influence number 13. I mean, be more specific. I don't know if you're talking about Trump, you're dead wrong. That has also been investigated. You guys are still whining. Hey, you don't like it? Tough. I am going to continue to whine, if you will. But I do believe in election integrity, and I'm not going to let that go. It's the future. They didn't do it this time because Trump's vote was so overwhelming that it turned out to be impossible to steal. That's my opinion. But this country has to get voting right. My senator here in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, filed legislation in 2019 that would have ended electronic voting, that would have required all votes to be cast on paper ballots, and that the election would happen in one day and it would be counted and the winner would be known by the end of that day. That's Elizabeth Warren, okay? She's not talking about that now. She kind of changed her tune, but there it is. Voter integrity, voter ID, used to be a liberal cause. It stopped being when they realized that they could use these levers of fraud. Likewise, censorship, by the way. Remember the ACLU used to be into stopping censorship? Remember how the liberals used to come out with the annual most censored stories of the year? Now the liberals are the ones who are complaining, who are the main censors, as they complain about the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has decided to end, I'm getting a terrible cough here, sorry, to end the censorship regime. And maybe he will. I don't know how sincere he is, but it would certainly be a great thing. Anyway, you're welcome to join the program. You can text me on TikTok and I'll read it. You could text me on Rumble or Kicks. You could call 508-637-5596. 508-637-5596. Hello, you're on the
Hello,
air.
Charles.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm just fine. Here in Texas, and it's very cold.
Oh, well, it's pretty cold up here in Massachusetts, too.
I can only imagine.
So,
I just got on. What's the conversation?
well, we're talking about the incoming Trump administration. We're talking about the Carter funeral. We're talking about the fires in Los Angeles. We're talking about news. What's on your mind?
Yes. Well, I'm really. I think I watched a video of yours. Maybe it was yesterday, last night,
Yeah.
and this morning, talking about the inauguration and just worries of what could possibly happen. And
Yes.
It's really like it's starting to click to me that there is a possibility that something could very well happen.
Well, I'm suggesting that people not go to any rallies in the day up. It's too dangerous. I mean, this establishment, look what they did on January the 6th of 2021.
Yes.
I don't want to see that happen again. I think we should stay home. I think Donald Trump should stay home until the day. Stay in a bunker, stay safe. Tell his family, everybody should be quiet. We won. Let's just be quiet. Let's stay safe and get across the finish line on January 20th in one piece. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe, we'll have plenty of time to celebrate later. Once Trump is in office, it's going to be very difficult for this corrupt, rotten, illuminated, internationalist deep state to stop him. Even if, God forbid, they did injure Trump once he's president, it'll be too late because he will have been inaugurated. We'll have J.D. Vance and we'll have the whole establishment in place. It looks like all of his nominees are going to be confirmed at this point. And so they won't be able to stop Trump, even if they, God forbid, if something happens.
I am looking so forward to it. And I'm so glad that it's happening on Martin Luther King Day. Everybody's going to go. We're all going to be able to watch.
You bet. Oh yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I can't wait. I mean, I'm counting the days, and I am so happy and gratified that we bit the bullet this time, and that Trump. I'm just looking forward to a glorious and great revival of this country, and I think we need to, moving forward, we need to continue to define what that's about. Why, what the MAGA movement's about, what it is to put America first, and really stand up and advance it. And so it becomes a generational movement, which I think it already is. I actually think that this is the most significant social movement since Reconstruction. We have never had this kind of.
It's something you can feel. It's something you can feel. I can feel it.
Oh yeah.
I know I can feel it.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Hallelujah.
Amazing. It's amazing. Well, I'll definitely be praying. I think we all should keep, our heads on a swivel and be very vigilant.
You bet. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Charles.
Okay. All right. Looks like I've got a couple of people that would like to join me on TikTok. You're welcome to join me, by the way, on live if you want to call in. 508-637-5596 if you're watching on Rumble or on Rockfin or some of the other venues that are carrying the program. I'm running live on Podomatic. I'm kind of looking forward this year to hopefully ending the censorship regime. Now that this corrupt, illegitimate regime is out of office. Yeah, I'm live on Rockfin. Rockfin is a pretty cool. Rockfin's a pretty cool site, by the way. And not to get in a quick, shameless plug, if I may, but my books are all available at Amazon Books, at Barnes & Noble Books. Amazon is the best because Amazon's actually published my books. And you could check them out just by putting my name in the server, Charles Moscowitz, like Moscow, Moscowitz. By the way, just for clarification, that the name means son of Moscow, son of Moses, not son of Moscow. In the same way that, like, in the Irish language, a name like O'Malley means son of Mali, or the son of the tribe of Mali. That's my understanding. It's a similar, linguistic element. All right, looks like we have another someone. They're all invited. You're all invited to join. Come on down. So let's just stay safe. I mean, I hope that we can get to the bottom of this really serious environmental catastrophe in California, which has nothing to do with global warming, has everything to do with bad management. I'm not a scientist, but I will note that there is a reason why, for example, forests in Germany, in Scandinavia, in France, in Eastern Europe, that they don't have these out of control wildfires that take out villages and destroy homes. And the reason they don't is because they manage their forests. They rake them, apparently. They, they do like controlled burns to keep keep them clean. They build roads that separate them out. I mean, there are management techniques, water management, that help them treat their forests like you would treat any other crop. I mean, and thus they don't have these destructive fires. That the corrupt liberal regime in California was warned actually by President Trump in his first administration, where he warned Gavin Newsom in person. There's a video of it. They're standing face to face. And he says, the federal government will help, but you need to divert some of the billions of gallons of fresh water that are dumped into the ocean in Northern California into the south by means of aqueducts or pond tunnels or pipes or whatever. And that Newsom ignored that. He ignored it instead because he had some cockamamie theory being put forth by alleged environmentalists who really, it was not good science, that somehow the increase in water supply would damage the rare smelt, a tiny fish, which, I mean, I don't even think that's true. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be. But how could an increase in water supply hurt a fish? I don't know. It doesn't ring well in terms of authenticity. Let's put it that way. Anyhow, or as my late grandmother used to say, anyhow, or anywho, I think that I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to thank you all for joining me today. I shall return tomorrow, God willing, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my usual co-host, Michael Shaw, who called me earlier to let me know that he's in Los Angeles, that he was having problems dealing with the fire. He is safe, he assured me. His family is safe. The atmosphere is smoky. And, there ought to be a price paid for this catastrophe. This is something that maybe could have been at least somewhat averted, maybe not fully. And that I hope that this leads to an awakening in California about the corruption and the rot of wokeism, of DEI, of illegitimate leftism, and how they now are paying the price. I feel very worried and bad for innocent people. I feel bad for everybody. Certainly, there is a little bit of schadenfreude over some of these fat cat left-wing actors and actresses and Hollywood types who are having their homes burned. I'm not going to deny the fact that I got a little drop of schadenfreude to see that Ben Affleck, who's from Boston, my hometown, and who's an ass, had to flee his home and go to that of his ex-wife. All right, okay, fine. I don't wish it on anyone, including him. And I'm not trying to be mean. But most of the people that are being hurt are regular people like all of us. And it's a catastrophe. It's a tragedy. God willing, everyone is safe, and that President Trump could come in and declare an emergency and help people rebuild, but to do so under the guise that they can ensure that it not likely will happen again. You have to learn from history. You learn from mistakes that were made. When an airplane crashes, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, goes in and they do a report. What happened? Why did it crash? Was it a design flaw? Was it, stress from overuse? Was it human error? What happened? And they try to correct problems that may be discovered so it doesn't happen again. And so flight can be safer. Cannot ever be 100% guaranteed. That's not, nothing in life can be 100%. But you make improvements. You don't just go back to, the casus belli. You improve. I mean, I suppose historically another example is the the Great Boston Cotton Grove fire in 1942, where you had 1,000 people burned to death because this nightclub didn't have doors that opened so people could get out. You only could get in. I actually had a relative die in that fire. The fact is that after that fire and after the situation was studied, now venues, you have doors that can only go out, so people can get out, and you have a limitation on the number of people allowed into a venue. I mean, there were regulations which are good because they're based on science and observation and research. Well, I hope that happens in this case. Last time it was ignored. This time, with President Trump coming in and maybe with an awakened public in California, there might be real change. There ought to be a price paid for your misinfo. Well, can you give me an example of misinfo that I have spewed? I'd be open to debate that with you. I'm not saying that my information is always 100% foolproof. I do the best I can. But if you feel that I have engaged in something that is not accurate, please elaborate and I will make the correction. If I'm wrong, I will stand corrected or I will debate you on it. So AMC OOSA on TikTok, you're welcome to call me 508-637-5596. 508-637-5596. Put your money where your mouth is. You think I gave misinfo? Tell me where. Tell me why. Tell me what. Okay? Am I being unfair to ask that? Okay, we've got a couple of other people. Nothing I've heard represents any kind of misinfo. No, I mean, I think that my record is fairly good. I'm not perfect. But hello, you're on the air. Peter?
Oh, hello, me?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are. You're on the air with me.
Hey, how are you, Charles?
I'm well, thank you.
I didn't even mean to do that.
Well, here you are. What's on your mind, Peter?
Oh, well, you know what? I didn't think you were spreading any misinformation, really. I think you're just having a conversation.
I mean, I may have gotten something wrong. Look, look, if I got something wrong, someone is welcome to call me, and if I am wrong, I'll stand corrected. I'm not claiming to be I'm not unimpeachable. I mean, I do my best, but I try to do my research.
No, I think all of us on the right are that way. We're all open for, if there's any new information or if something is said or posted that is incorrect, we're definitely open for to be corrected.
Absolutely. Well, that's because conservatism is normal and natural, unlike the left, which is goose stepping along to some agenda And they really don't care about the
Oh,
truth.
absolutely.
Anyways,
No, I agree with you there.
thank you,
Well,
Peter.
you know, Charles, I'm glad I didn't really mean to I don't know how. I guess I joined your live, but I'm glad I got to talk to you. I love all your content,
Thank you.
and I just hope I'm out here in California myself, and I hope we can just deal with the situations, you know, with the. And I was raised on a tree farm up in Oregon,
Okay.
and I know about taking care of the forest and how you got to clean. You have to take care of your forest. You got to take care of the fuel so you don't have fire problems. And you know, even as having a tree farm, my family was always dealing with having to, you know, do the requirements of the insurance companies because we had a tree farm. You had to make sure that the land was cleared correctly to get insured every year.
I would think that a forest could be managed like any other field. I mean, it's not, you know, they do it in Europe. I mean, you don't see these big fires in Germany, and they have huge forests. What about the Black Forest? Right? I mean, they know how to manage them. They don't shy away about it. I mean, and I now see there's evidence that Newsom was warned by none other than President Trump at the time. They can divert millions of gallons of water from Northern California without affecting the water supply. And
well, absolutely, and I know that Gavin Newsom's been sending water out to the ocean because of a smelt. That's always been a controversy with me. I don't, you know, I always think humans first.
Well, how does that even work? Why would more water negatively affect a fish? I don't get that. I'm not a scientist.
No idea. I don't think I haven't researched that enough to really know what his reasoning was.
Yeah, I don't think. I wonder if the science on that is sound. But anyway.
Anyway, Charles, you know, it's really nice to talk to you.
Same here.
I'm glad I did get into your live.
Thank you.
And I do have an appointment here at 1 o'clock. I'm in the parking lot, but it was really good chatting. And I'm glad I got on to say, you know, to say hello and you know, talk to somebody else. Like you said, you know, on the right, we seem to be a little more level-headed.
Yeah.
And we would, you know, definitely want to digest everything and try to figure out what's really going on.
Indeed. It's where the intellectuals are. Thanks a lot, Peter. And be well. God bless.
Thank you, Charles.
All right.
And God bless you too. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks a lot. Okay. All right. I think I have enough time to take maybe one or two more calls. I'm going to sign off pretty soon, but you're welcome to join the program either on TikTok with a chat or an invite, or on Rumble, which is the flagship station of the show. I can take a chat or Kicks, or you can call in at 508-637-5596, 508-637-5596. Let's see, we have a couple of more invites here. You're welcome aboard. But anyhow, my books are available, as I said. My show is self-sponsored, so you know the way I sustain it is through my books. I've written over 20 books on a cross-section of topics. I've written on health. I've written on economy, a lot of history. I've written on religion. I've written a book about Judaism, about Islam. My most recent book actually is about anti-Semitism. And I'm working on one right now dealing with conservative social theory. You're welcome to check them out. They're all available at Amazon Books, Amazon.com. Put my name in the server, Charles Moscowitz, and you shall see them come up. So that's how I sponsor the show, through my books. Anyhow, I want to thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I shall return, God willing, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my usual co-host on Thursday, Michael D. Shaw, who is dealing right now with the fire in Los Angeles. He's fine, but it's smoky and he's having issues. So hopefully everything will be okay for him. Looks like we're getting somebody from TikTok. Hello, you're on the air with me. Oh, no. Okay. All right. So on that note, I'm going to thank you all for joining me this afternoon. God bless America. God bless the MAGA movement. God bless President Trump. And have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.